Thank you. This is forwarded to me by Uma Maheshwar Rao. Now let us start. Politics is something which we always feel shy about talking. So I looked at the dictionary. The dictionary says politics is the art and science of control over others through some policies. It's not necessarily politics is understood, it is international, it could be global level, it could be country level, it could be state level, it could be city level, it could be your personal level. So all the time we do politics. Many times we don't realize that we are doing politics. With each other also we do politics. Design is said to be standing on three pillars. The three pillars are, the first one is aesthetics. We all know very much about it. And the second one is pragmatics, what we many times term as a function and all the related things of production and everything else. The third one is politics. So it is aesthetics, pragmatics, and politics. But the politics is the part which is never talked about by designers openly. But I have seen all designers look down upon politicians, not politics, but politics can't be avoided because it's part of life. Design has enormous power, we all know, by the saying, which is often said by me and many others, if Cleopatra's nose had been a bit smaller, the history of Roman Empire would have been different. That is true because beauty has such power. Aesthetics has such power. As a kind of provocator, I would like to ask three questions to all of you. Just think about it. This first question is, if you look at the history of design, 100 years ago, Bauhaus started in 1919. It started in a place called Weimar in Germany. But in 1925, it is again closed. And it has started somewhere else called Dessau. There also it didn't last long. It was again closed now forever in 1933. Why? I always ask this question, why it has happened? That is one. The next is, in India itself, in the post-independent period, we are very, very poor because we were just left by the British colonial rule. So almost we are dry. During that time, in the 60s, when NID has started the first design institute, not first actually, it is third, but this is the major change in India, the modern design institute. When it started, it has started very grandly. It has brought dozens of well-known, the greatest designers in the world to its campus. It also has been gifted by Museum of Modern Art, one of the greatest museums in the world, the well-designed products exhibition. NID still has them. It has gifted all of them free of cost. And also the first cadre of design teachers which NID has trained, NID sent almost all of them abroad to the best design schools in the world. Now the question is, how could India afford that much of expense? Something to think about. The third event which has happened in India is the first ever UNIDO ICSID, United Nations Industrial Development Organization, and the ICSID, International Council of Societies of Industrial Designers, together, the great world bodies have come together first time ever to hold their conference in a developing country like India. First time they joined hands like that. And it's not an ordinary event. It has gone for 10 days and it was attended by delegates from 37 countries. So how did we make it and why? Why we made it and what happened? Worth thinking about it. I will quickly answer one by one. The first one is very easy to answer. Why Bauhaus was shunted from one place to another place and also finally permanently closed. Because the power, the ambitious Hitler is coming into power, Nazism is coming up. And design is, as I often say to my students, is question. And nobody likes questioning. So that is the reason why it was closed. Of course, you know there are things that we will talk about it later, how you can not stop an idea. The second answer for the second happening is that we should understand the world politics. At that time, if you see the 1960s, 50s and 60s when Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru was first Prime Minister and then Indira Gandhi took over. During that time, rightly or wrongly, we have taken a neutral stand because there is a Cold War going on between the superpowers at that time, America and Russia. And very diplomatically, Nehru has adopted this stand of neutrality so that we are not enemies to anybody. We are friends to both. So that made America to take it seriously to help India, and Ford Foundation was the major funding agency in India. And the Ford Foundation helped these, most of them, if you see, they're from Europe and many of them from America. So they were funded by Ford Foundation. Even the teachers, would-be teachers going to best institutions also. And also the Museum of Modern Art, which is situated in America. So they have kind of generous enough to give all those well-designed products as a sample, as an example for us to look at it and get inspired by. The third one is, I guess, it's at that time, again, the context, at that time, in 1979, when the UNIDO exit meeting at Ahmedabad and Bombay at IDC and the NID happened. It was happened because at that time the world is actually made to think by, I give credit to Mr. Victor Papanek, another American, who wrote this mind-blowing book, very, very popular book called Design for the Real World. He first time focused the world attention on the real world and said nobody is caring for them. This has pricked the international agencies, both ICSID and the UNO. They have a mandate to take care of the so-called developing countries. So that has been very useful to us, and within this context, many other things have also happened, and we have been able to convince the ICSID and UNIDO to make this conference happen and fund all the delegates and the speakers, some really great names in that time, including Victor Papanek himself. This, I would say, neither Walter Gropius is a politician nor Gautam Sarabhai is a politician, nor Ashok Chatterjee, who have been instrumental in making these 3 events happen. But they were conscious of the power of the policies. So they have finally were trying their best to influence the politicians and the governments. So I'm saying that what is the power of design? Why are we talking about it? I will tell you one instance. Once there was, if you know the Indian history, we also had emergency once, and it was a really tough period. Nobody, if you say anything, one word against the government, you will be immediately put into the jail without any trial. So it was so bad, so the press is silenced, everything else is silenced. But ideas cannot be silenced. Guns, people could be killed and jailed, guns could be silenced, but ideas cannot be silenced. Because one day I was traveling during the emergency time in a train. I heard a beggar, a blind beggar singing a revolutionary song against the ruling government. So I said, my goodness, this is the power. Everybody is listening in the compartment. What can you do to a blind beggar? And this is a song. It is as powerful as Barbara Streisand you heard a few minutes ago. So this is the power of the idea. The idea cannot be killed. It will come another way or something, because idea is an abstract thing. Thinking cannot be killed. There's one person whom I always admired for his use of this. He's not a designer. He's Gandhi. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi realized it and used it. He never claimed he is a designer, but I think at the core of it, he is like a designer. Everything he has done. So this is the power of idea. Design, therefore, is subversive. Design is subversive politics. Designers can, make the bitterest and most critical subversive message so beautiful that that is irresistible for people to take it. The originators may not even know themselves that designers are doing that. We have many, evidence of that. Revolutions happened even in this country. We heard about Salt Satyagraha, which Gandhi had done, and then we have Chipko Andolan, which is very, very successful, and then Navanirman, which is another very successful thing, which has kind of actually changed the governments. It is so powerful. Design is also subliminal politics. What I mean by subliminal, I will give you an example of subliminality. Subliminal is something which is there, which is powerful, but you don't know that it is there. I will give an example of 2 great books and 2 great people who are no more, but what they have done cannot be undone. One is Victor Papanek. I already said he wrote this great book called Design for the Real World. Another one is The Wounded Civilization, India, a Wounded Civilization, written by a Nobel laureate, B.S. Naipaul. Naipaul's criticism of design in India is ruthless, it's very scathing, and he's a powerful writer. So therefore it hurts even more. It hurt the whole design community, everybody included, because he didn't have the time or inclination to bother into get into why things by design is in a way it was when he visited. And he had very little time to actually understand it. That is apparent. But what is not apparent is the tremendously popular book, Design for the Real World. It almost kind of changed the thinking of the younger people at that time. We were all very young at that time. But it is insidiously bad. There's only one brilliant, very kind of piercingly intellectual Guy Bonsipi, a German guy, could realize it. And Bonsipi criticized the book, saying that it is a poison. Because the way he is looking at the developing countries, he is very patronizing, very, you have a tin can radio, I will have a nice, beautiful, radio for myself, or audio system for myself. Some of the things, I don't go into this, but what I'm saying is this is subliminal. Everybody says it's a great book. There is a great following even now of Victor Papanek. But the book is I agree, I tend to agree with Guy Bonsipi that it is a poisonous book. It makes the world think of the real world in a way which Papanek thought that is, which is not real. So last time in my webinar, I said that it's an imaginative real world. Design is also, political ideology matters in design. We many times don't realize it. Is designing, you see, many times we feel what is design doing in this? Because our ideology is not clear, not focused. Is design capitalist, stooge, subjecting the proletariat, depend on the bourgeois? I'm using the words from Karl Marx 200 years ago. This man has changed the whole thinking with his one little book called Das Kapital. And this is the ideology. This ideology is still there. Communism is his creation. Many people say communism has failed, but that's a different story altogether, why it failed and all that. But the thinking is still right. Even if you don't agree with me that it is not right, it is wrong. But the question is whether designers have an ideology or not. Or we will do whatever the client wants and client wants me to do. Or we just that kind of people. My own view is that we are not that kind of people. We must have our own ideology, our own value system, and according to that we should behave, and we should be moved, and we should address the sweatshops which are happening in poor countries all over, particularly in Southeast Asia, and the environmental degradation which is happening everywhere, and the inequality happening by design by people who are mentally ill or physically disabled. We don't even think of it, or even why up to that, if one is little heavy, or and someone is too thin or too fat, then we have we don't consider them as worthy of design. And coming back to the country like India with vast craft community, craft people, and vast agricultural community, that's also, these two are hardly scratched by design. Should we be concerned about it? My question is not a criticism, but my question is for all of you, all designers to think, should we care for them? Should we have an ideology which will attend to this kind of things? Design made a lot of politicians. India, of course, knows it very well, particularly South India, where I'm speaking from. Real power on reality power. We have M.G. Ramchandran, N.T. Ramarao, we have Jayalalitha, we have Karunanidhi. All have come from the film, which is actually the South Indians are obsessed with film. So they become chief ministers, and how they become chief ministers, owing to the power of design, of the projected image. Projected image has such, we know it is projected, but still we like to make it real. We still get carried away by the projected image, knowing well that it is only image. Yeah. Many people have killed themselves when MGR died or when Jayalalitha died. So this is happening all over. So that is the psychology. So design is people-centered and has tremendous mental power. And politicians also used these people who knew its power, and they have come to use it for the very big advantage of themselves and the world politics. Gandhi has done it, Hitler has done it, and even today, the political rallies, the turbans which we have pagdis which the politicians wear just to please the constituency people, and the pandals, the design of the Rath, etc. They're obvious ones. United States of America has used "I Want You" poster, which is a well-known now. That is the first time they wanted, during the World War, they wanted people to recruit to join the army. So it's very successful poster. This we can see that poster, Arun.
Yeah, yes, sir, yes, sir.
We will see some examples of how design can kind of play a role in the politics of image politics. A couple of them I have picked up. One is the direct propaganda, which Hitler has used film, and and America has used. This earlier I was telling, pragmatics and politics, aesthetics, pragmatics, and politics. Next, this is the poster, which is Uncle Sham. "I Want You" poster, very powerful poster. The finger pointing at you. Next, so this is a poster by Colors of Benetton. You must have seen many times. I picked up very, very popular ones. So you must have seen all of them. Just to recap, I'm saying this is one area where the racial bias, racial politics have been tried to be nullified by this company. They've been successfully and consistently doing this. They're committed to this social cause. Next is the body bias. As I mentioned, there is inequality. Next. This is, I mentioned about we have the body bias and body politics. Only certain body shape and body weight and body color is accepted. Unfortunately, why can't we have everybody equal? So this is a postcard by a German called Klaus Steg. He wanted to make people aware that we should not have any bias towards a particular body. So he has taken the Leonardo da Vinci's very, 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 very well-known painting of Mona Lisa and made Mona Lisa sit on a wheelchair. So this is the beauty. So the title, "Let Nobody Is Perfect." So it's a wonderful, card, wonderful image. This is of he is trying to persuade people. Next, there is also positional bias. This is a world map, but I'm sure many of you have not seen it in this orientation. At a first glance, you will think it is upside down. It's not upside down. Who said which is upside and which is downside. There is nothing like, because we all know it's a globe, and on a globe there is no up and there is no down. It also keeps on turning. But what happens is, it is pure semiotics. What is up or top is supposed to be better, and what is down and what is north is what is south, what is down is supposed to be not so good. Similarly, there is left side and right side. Left side is supposed to be not so good, right is supposed to be good, and all these biases we will have. These are space semiotics, which many people are not conscious of it, but they do work on you. So just for the heck of it, just to counter the bias, we said, okay, why not we have a map where Africa is on the top, and America and Russia are in the down. So this is just to give you anti-bias. So this is one. Then there is language bias, language politics. Next. Yeah, we use these words very, very frequently. Third world, developing world, all that, when they are referring to the countries like China, India, Brazil, and all that, which are poor countries. But developing as a word, you see, it's very derogatory. Third, also in a way derogatory, because that means it is like the first hand and second hand, and you are a third hand. So sometime back when I was invited to write an article, I took a strong stand saying that as long as you are using that word, I will not write. I want to. So they're very kind and very open enough to ask what word you want to use. So I said, people should be the focus, because we are all for the people. We are doing things for the people, not for the money or something like that. That should not be the criteria. The money you have in your pocket, or the industries, the number of industries you have in your country, should not be the focus. It should be the people who should be the focus. So what word we should say? Okay, you call the people who are majority world, and the others are minority world. So America becomes the minority world, and China and India, that highly populated countries becomes majority. So that is how language, helps. Even in earlier, people used to call handicapped. That has been objected by people because it's derogatory. So now the word used to denote somebody who has got some physical problem is that physically disabled people. Yeah. So next. Yeah. The other one is the medium itself. Marshall McLuhan, a communication theorist, the mind-blowing book he has written, Medium is the Message, or Understanding Media, he wrote. And after that, he kind of followed it up because he thought about it further, and he said, medium is not just the message, it is a massage. So therefore, it is now come to massage, because it actually massages no matter what the content is. The medium itself will kind of make you look at it in one way or the other. If you write some message on a blackboard is one thing, and the same message you use it, show it in a film, or make it into audiovisual, or send it on WhatsApp or Instagram or something. This is totally different. And he was very right. Yeah. So this has been now used by politicians, unfortunately, because they're quick to catch. They're very smart people. So use of social media on TV channels. In fact, many politicians kind of own the TV channels. So similarly, they own newspapers, they own press also. And because of that, a lot of fake news is going around. So you don't know what to trust and what not to trust. Because here it is, there are three things which made this, absolutely dangerous area. First of all, it is unedited. There is nobody sitting and taking responsibility for it is good or bad, or whether it could be done, or whether it is damaging, or whether it is enriching. That is there, and it is also fastest. Before you know, it has gone everywhere. So there is no, time for you to even, rethink about it. So it has got, and also maximum spread. You, with the touch of a button, in a fraction of a second, it has gone to millions of people. So this is where the danger lies. So you don't know. Once you've done it, you can do nothing about it. It's like, I will say, it is a kite without a thread. Next. Yeah, then design for democracy. We will look at some of these. How design can work in a democracy. There are 3-4 examples I got here. One is the electronic voting machine played a major role in and prevented the ballot box corruption in the country. This is a kind of, this is entirely Indian, done by Indian design teams from NID and IDC. That is one good story. The EVM, what is called electronic voting machine, is still being used. Next is another thing which has happened in America in 2000, year 2000, in USA presidential elections. Al Gore and Pat Buchanan were two candidates. Al Gore was very popular, very nice man. They all loved it. But finally, Al Gore lost, and his rival Pat Buchanan won because of the lacunae in design of the ballot sheet. The ballot sheet was confusing to many elderly people, and so they all have, answered. They ticked on 2 places where they're supposed to tick only at 1 place. So this invalidated all the votes. So many votes have been invalidated, and the wrong candidate have been selected. That is one big, kind of power which is in the hands of the designers, and how designers can also, butcher many times. Then there is in India right here, the design through press, advertisements and film and all that, either it protects or it supports the ruling party. Here is the protest poster for a film called Ram Ki Naam by Anand Patwardhan. It's a documentary against whatever all is happening in the name of the god Ram. So he called it in the name of God, in the Ram Ki Naam. And the other way also, things are happening. I don't have to name them. There are politicians are working with designers to help them rally, help manipulate the numbers, help manipulate many other things. So let me not get into that. The next one I want to show is a great tragedy which has happened next Bhopal gas tragedy. Raghu Rai had taken this picture. This is a wonderful, very heartbreaking kind of picture. This is what it can do. It's Bhopal gas tragedy. The victims are still suffering even today. Yeah. So, but this has done a lot of good to change the stand of the international SSL's international opinion, about this gas tragedy which has happened. there are also other kind of politics will happen, the corporate politics, which I have experienced personally. When you deal with the corporation, it's not always a smooth job. It's not just a good idea which will go through. That's why I keep on emphasizing that designers have to leave their egos, at home. And when they go talk to the client and client may be impressed, but the team is not impressed, they could always kind of damage your design. They can spoil your design in production and in many other ways. They could even kill the idea, bury the idea, saying that it will be too futuristic and all that. There are many ways of doing it. So that's why it is necessary. This is another kind of politics, departmental politics, which happen, and they will affect design. So that is one type. Design, I always say that design is not logical, but psychological and social. Next. Yeah. So what I mean by that is, car, we all think car is, when Henry Ford came up with the car idea, everybody thought it is a beautiful means to take you from one place to another. But it's not just that, it's not as simple as that. Here is in front of us, it's the world's most expensive car. It doesn't only take you. Even a small car with 3 lakhs or 5 lakhs will also take you. This is whooping some 30 crores or so. Now go back, Arun. Go back. Yeah. This. Yeah. No. Car. Yeah. Please stay there. So this car is not just a means of transportation as we always believe. Like I said some time back in my TED talk, watches don't tell time. The car is not only to take you from place to place. That is by the way. So what is the car? When car is first started, even when Henry Ford came up with the car is a revolutionary social emancipation. It changed all the sexual mores, all the social mores, and everything else is changed along with it. Yeah. It has changed the whole lifestyle of people. The other one is, there is another thing which is more subliminal and many people don't realize, is that a car and a fridge are necessities in certain kind of financial situation like Europe. But in a poor country where people, their daily earning is only $2 a day. And when the media now is everywhere, it's like transparent, it's no more limited. Globalization made everything accessible and everything is seen in a glossy, romantic, glamorous, attractive way. So a car and a fridge are symbols of revolt in these countries of have-nots. In the countries of haves, it is just a daily necessity. It is just, you have to go. But in the other countries, car is a prestige. Refrigerator is a prestige, even if you don't have electricity. But the refrigerators are still brought and given as a dowry gifts and all that. There are so many things. I don't want to take time. Once environmental exposure course where we send students out. Once I was looking at the sketches, and in a slum, there are antennas on the thatched or very shackled houses. So I asked the student, do they really have TVs and they have electricity there? So the student laughed at me and said, they don't have electricity. They don't have TV also inside. But if you have the antenna on the top of your hut, it will impress people. So just to impress, they will have the antenna. So this is the different kind of satisfaction. Yeah. So that is what design does. And many times we are not even conscious of it. Then next, there are national level policies. Support is absolutely crucial for a design. We have been trying in India to you get the political support, for a long time. India Design Council is now finally formed, and that's all what a government can do to promote design is all written in that India Design Council document. You can go and read. There is a national design policy document. But one thing I want to say before I conclude, I always envied architecture profession and Pilu Modi, who has done a tremendous service. He was a parliamentarian, he was the MP. Therefore, he could kind of push a bill where the bill is accepted. And it demanded every house, every building which is being built in the country should have an architect's approval, which has done tremendous good to the catapulting architecture profession in the country to new heights. But I wish one day that kind of thing happen in design too. And for that we need political lobbies, political lobbying. So only then this kind of things work. India Design Council happened, but I often feel that it doesn't have the fangs, it doesn't have the say in the government as it should be. I was told the country, Italy, has got a Ministry of Design, wonderful thing. One day I wish India can also have a Ministry of Design. Next. Yeah. I would like to conclude this short talk with a quote by my good old friend, the brilliant man, Guy Bonsati, who said that design is inevitably political. In that, and that, yeah, it is not negative. He said that in that it includes a component of hope, a dream of the society we want to live in. So we as a designers should understand the political power which we have and create a society of our dreams. So that is the end of my say. Okay, can we open, Akshaya, can we open this for question and answer?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
We have a few questions now.
Okay.
So there's a question from Ritya Prakash. Is spending time and resources on ideology sustainable? Since we are focused to solve the problems unbiased.
Yeah, a good question. It's always a kind of, there is some kind of give and take between the ideology and, the profession. We all have to, earn our living and we all have to eat bread. But as it says that man doesn't live by bread alone. We need love, we need appreciation, we need social good, we need all those things for which we have to give in. Many designers, I have seen many designers solve it by, there are many ways of resolving it. By many people say from a rich client, they take big money and then then you do that to the poor clients or craftsmen or something. So this gives you both. It gives you something to live by and something for the art and for your fulfillment of what you do. The other way is that you make your life so simple that you can do. Of course, that is difficult. But many people, what they do, they balance it by by working for client who can pay. Fortunately, India has many rich people too. It has got many poor people too, but it also has got some rich people and good rich people. So one way is to take it from the people who could afford and kind of give design almost free or at a low level to people who need it most. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. So the next question is from Mamta. So would like to know if we are still using the original EVM as was designed. Was it then hack-proof, and your view on its hackability now? And there is a follow-up question also. So would like to know more about the confusing sheet of ballot WRT Algor election.
This question I won't be able to really answer because I'm not involved in its design or following it up. How is it today? It was designed some 20 years ago or so. But I'm very close to Professor A.G. Rao, who's from IDC side, who was the designer of the EVM right now we are using. So I keep talking to him and hearing from him. According to him, even in the recent elections, our EVM has been used. There is a talk about importing EVMs, but in his view, Rao, you can correct me if you're listening there, but the EVM which you've seen in the picture is still being used. Even last elections, I had a discussion with Professor Rao, and he says, yes, it is being used. And he was happy on the whole with this. Nothing could be hack proof. I'm sure he also agree with me. It can't be hack proof. But those things have to be taken care. It could also be misused. I'm sure. So that has to be taken care by the Election Commission and other. I can't give the details because I don't know the technical details of this.
Okay. So, Tony sir has asked a question. So, considering the far-reaching impact of design and designers on politics, people, society, culture, perceptions, and its place in the socio-economic structure, as you have explained, what do you feel is the role of ethics? Should it be playing an active role, considering it's a slippery slope?
There is no question about it, Tony. Ethics play, to me, paramount role. I think design should start with ethics. If you don't have ethics, what you have, then you will be just money-making machine. And I don't think ever designers should, go so low. Ethics you should start with. And of course, there is some give and take, as I said, a little bit of compromise, but you can have. But ethics is the one which makes you run. I was told by some sociologists that the poor people pay the bank loans promptly because they have nothing but their own self-dignity. So ethics is something which is related to your own self-worth. If you don't have it, I don't know what you have. You are as good as a machine or a dead one. I personally don't think that I should go to that. That's why I wrote that book called Design Values. Values are most important thing. And we normally, the sad thing is that many design schools don't give it enough thought. We don't teach design values. So this is where we stand, and I hope many design school deans or directors are listening to me. So it should be kind of incorporated. Ethics is a very important subject.
Thank you, sir. So, Padmini ma'am has asked a question. So, isn't ideology helps solving the problem? Ideology helps in the way you solve the problem and which problems to solve. For example, if my client wants me to design selling many cigarettes, but my ideology says we should not promote what harms people, how would we solve the problem?
To me, it is related to the question on ethics. To me, it is very clear. If you kind of allow yourself to be carried away by the money you earn, you may have kind of satisfied temporarily, but your heart will always be, if you have a conscience, it will always say, there's so many people suffering because of your that design. So I would never do that, because that is very important for me. That guilt consciousness should not be there. If I have to sell cigarettes and I know that cigarettes do cause cancer, I should not be working on cigarettes. Unless I'm that conscienceless person, I don't care. I don't think any designer should go to that level, I'm saying. So you should not, I won't design cigarettes if they are causing cancer. Unless I have a kind of a point on it saying that how much, how less, and how I can help them attend the related problems, etc. There is a different matter, but you should at least knowingly do design your design, knowingly what it is causing. And if you know it is doing bad to the people and still you go ahead, that is a heartless situation. It's a very unfortunate situation if you have to do that. Many people, many designers worth their name have taken stand not to work on selling cigarettes, not to work on, some of them even not to work on alcohol. Of course, nobody is working on drugs, but anti-drug campaigns people can start. Yeah, all that. If you know something is, you see, ideology is basically your larger view and your concern and commitment to the society in which you are living, apart from your own selfish goal of satisfaction and you yourself and your family. That's very, very narrow. We should always be concerned about what we are doing to the society at large. Always, every small thing, and particularly in an era where there is mass production. I make something and it is produced tomorrow in millions. I should be very careful about the damage it can do. If I make one mistake, that mistake is multiplied. So I have to be very, very, careful about what I'm doing. If it is a craft product, it's only one product or something, it's a studio pottery kind of thing, then okay, I can work, this is bad, so I will throw it away and do something else. But if I've done something which is produced in millions, damage is already done. There's no way of retrieving it. So it is to be even more, you see, our conscience should be so many millions times because.
Thank you, sir. So the next question is from Mohan Chandra. So while it took political will to bring design education to India, does the absence of political representation of design in Indian governance has a missing impact?
If I understood the question rightly, you see, in the beginning, the rulers, whoever it is, have seen that design is a very, very important tool in catapulting the young fledgling, independent India to the international arena. But I think this enthusiasm is not shared by the rulers which came afterwards. Therefore, design has kind of not taken in the important place where it should have been. We are still designed, for example, in India, still under the Ministry of Industry and Commerce. It hasn't had an independent existence. So it still have kind of, it doesn't have the importance realized even after what, some 60 years of existence. It doesn't have even a commission. Yeah. So it is still a part of something, and there are, it took us so long time the NIDs to have some more NIDs, and this country still is languishing. Not enough, design schools. There is also not enough check on the quality of design schools. There are so many things which we have to do, and India Design Council has just started. It is functioning, but it's not effective enough because it doesn't have a independent power or authority. Yeah. So this is what I feel, that as far as Indian government is concerned, design is not yet taken by the planners and policymakers serious enough. It applies to craft design as well as the industrial design. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
I can't hear. Hello? Akshaya, you are mute. Unmute. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Can you hear now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can designers be successful in politics? So, sir, if you are offered a cabinet minister post, which ministry will you choose and why?
If I am offered,
Yeah.
I think designers should get into politics. That much I accept, and some designers are trying to, but I don't know why they were not yet. But I would be happiest man if I see some designers getting into politics. Yeah, there will be some change. Certainly will come if a designer has become a minister. I'm sure a lot of good will come. But personally, I am offered. I'm actually, too aged for ministership. But if you think I can do, yeah, I will do. I don't think that anybody will do that, but if I'm offered, I will certainly take it. Because somebody has to do that. Politics is not a dirty word. Politics is not a 4-letter word, I said in math. Politics is very important, and we look down upon them because it's so much corruption there. But how will you, unless you are an insider, how will you correct the corruption? See, if there are more good people inside, automatically the bad people will go down. But right now the situation is there are so many corrupt people and there's so less of good people. So, and it's a democracy, so always majority rules. But somewhere it should start. Like Pilu Modi has become an MP. I wish to see a designer becoming at least the MP, if not minister. So somebody can voice.
Thank you, sir. So the next question is from Suvarna. So an interesting overview on the impact of design. And design thinking is being spoken a lot these days in the top management forums, Make in India and startup promotions. We have Chief Innovation Officer in central governance. What should be government's vision and policy decisions to build design culture?
Yeah, it's a very loaded question. Government, should have some designers in their teams when they're working in policies. Right now, I think that is lacking, and the government is going ahead, taking decisions. For example, we have Make in India. When I heard this is a beautiful thing, But I always wondered, if you are making something, you are only giving your working skill or your labor, and we will be the hub of the, if you are aspiring to be the hub of Make in India, to be the hub of making, then we have reduced ourselves to the workers of the world. But you can't make a thing unless you design it. So you will take somebody else's design from abroad and then you make it here for him. So that will always keep you in a second position of maker or worker. I think we should aspire, India should aspire to become the designer who is a idea maker, who is a kind of brain. So we should come to that position. I always said we are talking about Make in India, but why are we not talking about design in India? I got no answer about it for it, because the planners and all these policy makers, they thought of only Make in India, but they haven't thought of design in India. And if we think of design in India, we have a very big opportunity in the world. And I'm sure we can certainly do it. Many designers in this country are actually working for commissions from other countries. So our design capability is no less. We are next to none in the world. But that has not been used nationally. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. So there is actually one more question from Tony, sir. So do you think design is not taken seriously because the traditional understanding of the word design is not problem solving? It's understood as something very specific to products among the common person. Do you think we have failed in creating the right awareness of what exactly design means and the impact it can have across the world? Also, this could be the reason we are talking about Make in India and not design in India.
Yeah, the observation is absolutely correct. Because even after so many years, we have not yet able to make people aware of what design is. So therefore, the parents are confused, the general public is confused, government is also confused. So everybody has a different view of design. This has not been there is no constancy. Every time I meet a parent, I have to explain him this is what it is. So there, I think the awareness is still lacking. Of course, given the size of our country and the plurality which we have, there are, of course, a number of complex problems which we have. But behind all that, the fact is that design awareness is not yet come to. It has to be, in my opinion, it should be done in a massive scale using the media like film and TV and all that. That has not been done. There is no single thing, like BBC has produced some wonderful films explaining what design is, and that they have done some 50 years ago. I still use those films. But in India, we have not produced a single film which says very effectively and strongly and clearly what design can do to common man or to any man at all. So we only look at the material from our resources really have to be developed, and this awareness is the first thing in any bringing any profession up. That has not yet happened. I agree with you.
Thank you, sir. So the next question is from Mohan, sir. So your views on politics in corporate environment, where design may not be accepted because of threat perceptions or understood well enough.
Yeah, it is related to the question which we're just now talking about with Tony. The corporations also have no idea of design clearly. They also have a mixed or ambiguous perceptions of design. And many times it is understood as the R&D departments every industry is supposed to have. So they many times misunderstand it as the R&D kind of design, which is a different kind of design. Yeah. But the design we are talking about, which deals with aesthetics and pragmatics and politics, is not understood in that context. So the awareness of the industries is also poor in this country. I won't name, but one very big industry managing director and chairman and managing director asked me, once I sent him something which is very about typography, and he asked me, what is typography? Tell me. And this industry I'm referring to, this is some 60-year-old industry and one of the major industries in South. So this is and he has gone abroad and he has studied and he is absolutely qualified man. He is not an ignorant man, but he doesn't know what is typography. So I don't blame him. I blame the profession and whoever is connected with it. I can't always blame the government for not doing it, but I think we all have to first make people aware of it. I'm kind of not using the word educate because it has a different kind of connotation. It is making people aware and tell them what design clearly is and what it can do. It's not just a promotion, but it is, telling people what it is. Architecture, everybody understands, but design, many people misunderstand. This is where we are, and including corporations and business houses. Yeah, even if they were using design for quite some time, still the misunderstanding persists. Their understanding will be, if at all it is there, it is very, very limited to how to sell a product which they are producing better. Yeah. So you'll be fortunate many times if the managing director or chairman is there in the meeting. Many times he leaves it to the production. Yeah. So this is what it is with the main industries, in my experience with the major corporations in this country. And then not to talk about the small scale industries and smaller corporations. So there is a lot of work to be done in this area of awareness at various levels.
Thank you, sir. Sir, actually, Tommy sir is asking, would it be possible for you to share those films or any links where we can see these?
Share what? Sorry?
Share those films that you are talking, like you are answering to this Tony sir's question.
Yeah, BBC Films. Yeah, oh, sure.
Yes, sir. I think we have come to the end.
Okay.
There are no more questions.
All right. Okay, then I would like to thank everybody for coming and asking good questions and staying patiently till the end. And yeah, have a good weekend. And you announce about the next webinar, last two.
Yes, sir. Actually, today's webinar was a new topic. Like we couldn't find this topic talking elsewhere. So it was actually very informative, and a lot of attendees are actually telling it in the feedback. So this is a very informative session, and thank you so much for this time, sir. And next weekend we'll have our 8th series. So the 8th series will be Eyes Don't See. So which will happen on 20th June between 4 to 5. So until then, everybody have a great weekend. And thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Akshay. Thank you, Arun.